this series this evening. I already recorded this video, but I had some substantial microphone issues, so I am going back and doing commentary over this episode rather than my usual live reactions. So just something a bit different. I didn't want to waste the footage that I recorded and have you miss out on the updated adventure, since there were some important things that happened in this episode. So first of all, just a quick glance at the Pokémon in our party. You may have noticed the newest member of our group, the Execute Exter. We, of course, captured that Execute on our return trip to Fuscia City. If you recall, we actually visited Fuscia City a while back in our adventure, so that is where, of course, we met Minnie, well, off the route to the west, I guess, of Fuscia City. So we are now returning to challenge the gym proper after visiting the Safari Zone in the previous episode. So if you haven't watched the episode directly before this where we explore the Safari Zone, then please go check out that video and see where our meeting with Execute began. So one thing that I found interesting with this gym was that it was quite a bit different than what I remember when playing the Fuscia City Gym in the Generation 1 games. Now, it could be because it's been quite a while since I played that game, or those games, I guess. Or it could be just that they are quite a bit different in the Johto, or the Gen 2 version of Kanto. I can't remember. Of course, there is a brand new gym leader for this gym, quite a bit different already, but I don't remember the ninja puzzle of sorts where you have to go through and find the gym leader amongst all of the seemingly identical ninjas. I just remember the invisible wall kind of path puzzle, which I'm not sure with the version that I'm playing. I'm not sure if it's just the resolution and the exposure, or if it's just naturally that easy, but you'll notice that in this gym the invisible barriers are extremely easy to see. So I don't remember that being as easy either. Maybe on the classic Game Boy Color screen they were just much more difficult to see, which I'm sure that does play into it. But the first trainer that we chose to battle, or I guess really had no choice but to battle in this particular gym, has of course a Bulbasaur and 2 Ivysaur, which I thought was kind of an interesting choice for the gym, since I know they are poison type or partial poison type, but they're not really the kind of Pokemon that you immediately think of with a poison gym, and they're not quite the stealthy ninja type of Pokemon either, but of course they stand no chance against our Loflord, which has continued to be a well-timed powerhouse that we got back on Cinnabar Island in the Pokemon Mansion. But the issue, of course, with any poison type battles or Pokemon is, of course, the poison type status condition, which we found ourselves in early on. Here we have an update of our gym badges. I wanted to give everyone a update on kind of where we stand. We have 6 gym badges, 3 from Johto and 3 from Kanto. So I'm not sure if we can challenge the Elite Four with 8 badges, or with this ROM hack if you do have to get all 16, especially since it is, the open world scaled kind of addition to Pokemon Crystal. I guess we will see. But the second Pokemon trainer that, of course, we are battling has an amazing Nidoqueen, which, once again, I know that it's a partial poison type, but still not a poison Pokemon that I usually think of. I think of Nidoqueen as more of a ground type, so it's just an interesting choice. But of course, with that scaling, we get to see some really cool Pokemon like Nidoqueen in these gym battles and even out in the open world, which is one thing that I really appreciate with this particular ROM hack. It's cool to see these fully evolved Pokemon that you would almost never usually see throughout the game, unless of course you were battling a gym leader or someone in the Elite Four or Champion, things like that. So one thing that I always find interesting is how my perspective on Pokemon changes as I get older. When I was young, I was always a bigger fan of Nidoking than Nidoqueen. I think just being young and brash, I just liked the large look of Nidoking, the spikes, it looked intimidating, and I was much more likely to use it in-game. As you can see, heading back to the Pokemon Center here quickly for a heal of that poison status, since of course it's such a short stroll back to get healed up. But anyway, back on my original point. Now, for quite a while now, my interest has leaned more towards Nidoqueen. I think, first of all, I like the color scheme much better, the bluish green, rather than the pink color, and I almost like the subtlety of the horns and just the overall just kind of bulk of Nidoqueen other than Nidoking. So now I definitely would choose Nidoqueen over it. It's just funny. I think the same goes for just my favorite Pokemon list in general. This is the part that I found interesting. We find Janine here, which I seem to remember Koga always being in the complete center of the room, and you kind of have to make your way through the invisible maze to reach him. But once again, someone will just have to remind me in the comments what it's actually like in the Kanto version. Leading off with a Crobat here, I thought was really cool. Koga would definitely use a Crobat, and I like in Generation 2 in the Johto games that when they actually use the Johto version of the Pokemon, or the Johto exclusive Pokemon, or I guess the phrase I'm looking for is the Pokemon native to the Johto region. A lot of the gym leaders in the Generation 2 original games, they used a lot of Kanto Pokemon, and I know a lot of videos have been made over the years about that, and as a matter of fact, I guess a lot of the Pokemon that you actually encounter in that game in the Johto region are actually Kanto Pokemon, which is really, really strange. So I'm glad in this version of Crystal they opened that up quite a bit, and you see a lot more Johto Pokemon. But here, Crobat is one of the coolest additions in the Generation 2 expanded Pokedex. I think Golbat was very deserving of an evolution, and Crobat is just such an awesome design. The coughing, I thought, was a bit of a basic choice, just kind of that, as if you don't battle enough Team Rocket members over the course of the Generation 1 and Generation 2 games, we have to have a coughing pop up in the possession of Gym Leader Janine as well, and not even a wheezing, which, if you're going to have one as a gym leader, especially a scaled gym leader with all level 30 and above, at least have a wheezing. But now that I say that, what level does coughing even evolve at? I feel like coughing is one of those Pokemon that evolves at a high level. I think it definitely does, so maybe I'm foolish there, and coughing turning out to be one of the easier ones, just I think mostly due to the fact that we have two Pokemon with psychic type moves that aren't directly weak to poison, so it's pretty great. One note that I made about Ariados is that I feel like it's one of the most underrated or overlooked Pokemon in Generation 2. And even by myself, I'm definitely guilty of that. Ariados, just when you look at it in the Pokédex, I think out of context, it just looks like a basic bug, but in this context of, a Pokemon of a ninja poison type gym leader, I feel like Ariados is a lot cooler, and I think the sprite in this game does it a lot of favors. Some Pokemon, I will argue to the death, look much better in sprite artwork rather than 3D models, and honestly, I'm sure I could put together quite a big list of Pokemon that I definitely think look better in sprites. But I'm just such a huge fan of the just original sprite work anyway, so maybe I'm a bit biased. But anyway, as you can see, we do have a secondary Coughing, so stands very little chance against Midnight and the Psybeam we have. And of course we have that leftovers, which helps us regain just a bit of XP. Midnight has really turned out to be an excellent Pokemon for us. An early capture and just honestly such a great one. Venomoth is the final Pokemon for Janine, and I'm sure obviously stands very little chance at this point since Midnight has regained most of its HP. But Venomoth has always been one of my favorite poison-type Pokemon, especially in the Generation 1 Pokédex. And compared to Butterfree, I've always been Team Venomoth. I think it's just one of those, I don't know, it's a bit different. It's the less common choice. Maybe when I was young, I was just wanting to be a contrarian, who knows, but honestly, I just really like the design of Venonat over Caterpie and Metapod, and something about the purple and just large wings of Venomoth, it just looks cool. I really like Venomoth quite a bit. I actually have the still in-box original Tommy figures. It's a dual pack that comes with Venonat and Venomoth on my wall right now. But as you can see, Janine has been defeated, and like I said before, I think the easiest, or at least one of the easiest gym battles we've had. Just poor typing for Janine, but we did get the Soul Badge. And I actually forgot to read this on the first time through, so okay, Toxic is a powerful poison type, steadily saps a victim's HP. Okay, so later on you will see that I teach Toxic to Minnie, and I could not remember if Toxic deals direct damage upon use or not, and from that description, it seems as though it's just a poison application move, so I definitely guessed incorrectly, but I still don't think it was a terrible choice for what I got rid of. But anyway, as you can see, Janine gave us a badge as well as a TM, but did not cure us of the poison in which she applied to our Pokemon. So, yeah, quite a cruel gym leader, if you ask me. One thing that I found interesting right here, since it says that if you want to train, you can actually re-challenge gyms by interacting with these statues in the front of the gym, which I actually did not know until this episode. So my big question on that is, do the gym leaders scale according to the point in which your game is currently scaled, or do they scale independently based on the gym, maybe the point in the game in which you challenged them, or do they scale like post Elite 4 level immediately? I'm not sure. We'll just have to try it out at one point and test it. But here we decide to go ahead and give that TM to Minnie, which Minnie is a bit, I think, weak on moves, as you can see. selection of TM, so I need to keep that in mind. And check some of these other Pokemon to make sure that we have a well-rounded variety of moves. But Pokemon like Mini definitely need a bit more damage. As you can see, Toxic can be taught to all of our Pokemon, which is, I think, quite funny. My big concern with Exter is that I wasn't really considering how low of level it is. I think it's level 26 or 28, but it's going to be quite difficult at this point in the game, especially since the game did just scale again with that gym defeat, or gym victory. So I'm afraid Exter is going to end up falling behind, but sometimes it's hard to flesh out and fully train a full party of 6, so if we really only utilize 5 or so, then that's fine. But anyway, we just need to decide where to head next, and since we already defeated the Vermilion and Cerulean City Gyms, as well as Cinnabar and Fuscia, I think we should definitely head to Celadon, and we can just go east up the bike path, since we just need to work our way back around it. Celadon is such a fun city to explore, but before that we need to visit a mart and stock up on supplies, since we are always finding ourselves out in the wild and without antidotes and revives, things like that, so we need to stop by and pick up some items. So we definitely need some potions. We'll just pick up some super potions. 5 should do it. And one other thing we're always running out of are revives. Obviously, it's always nice to have a few, but antidotes. But I think they have full heals, and yes. So we'll take 10 full heals, and that should keep us out of the trouble that we found ourselves in a lot of these episodes, where I feel like we are routinely getting poisoned. We've definitely been paralyzed quite a bit, but we found ourselves poisoned or paralyzed out in the wild over and over. That patch of grass there that you just saw, that was the infamous area in which we captured our beloved Mini, if you do recall, so long ago. And that battle was absolutely the craziest battle that we've had in terms of just hijinks and luck. So if you haven't, I can't remember actually which episode that is, but if you haven't watched that one, please go check it out. It's definitely enjoyable. So one thing that I found funny on this route is, as you can see, there are many changes to the route from the original Crystal and to this ROM hack, but one thing that I always found funny was that these sprites, they almost just look like generic kids on a bicycle, and then when you get to the battle screen, it's like this big biker on a motorcycle with a mohawk. It's just funny. Charmeleon has such a cool sprite work, or sprite in this game. It just looks fierce and just, very awesome. And the animation is so cool as well. The fact that it uses rage, I feel like it just brings back those memories of using Charmeleon, because I feel like that's one of the early moves that you get around that level in which you evolve Charmander to Charmeleon. But it stands very little chance against Birdo at this point. Birdo has become quite the powerhouse for us, and it's just been an excellent Pokemon, especially once we got Psybeam. And as you can see, a lot of these bikers utilize coughing as well, I'm sure, due to the close proximity to the Fuscia City Gym, so they are not really much of a challenge for us at this point, because as we've seen, Poison type is one of the weaker types against our Pokemon team makeup, so it's beneficial for us. As you can see, they did add this kind of cute little helmet And honestly, a good thing, because I feel like every time, especially in the Generation 1 games, I feel like every time you battled a Team Rocket grunt and you left there coughing with just sliver of HP, they would always use self-destruct, or was it explosion? I can't remember which one was which for them, but such an annoying move, because then it just devastates your Pokemon, and really for nothing, because the coughing was extremely weak and was barely still conscious, so very annoying. But one thing that you'll notice is that these bikers, several of them have Magmar, which I'm fairly certain in both Kanto and Johto is quite a rare Pokemon, so they either have very common coughing or just these extremely rare Magmar, so a bit of kind of a back and forth when it comes to what types of Pokemon they utilize, which I thought was quite interesting. Of course, we are quickly poisoned, and luckily we have with us a good plethora of antidotes as well as those full heals, but we'll use the antidotes first. That way we can save those full heals in case we have paralysis or something like that, or sleep. But good thing we were thinking ahead, because now we are back to normal and Birdo is in fighting form. This route, I feel, is also quite a bit bigger than the original, but once again, I'm not exactly positive on that, but as you'll see in just a moment, there are a few structures that I definitely know were not there, or at least they're being utilized for something different. As you can see, the second Magmar we encounter, so this portion in particular, I feel like it went on forever, but just wanting to ensure that we get all of the XP possible, just searching out all of those trainers and leveling up as much as we can, because as you've noticed, I'm sure, the level scaling is starting to become a bit worrisome. What I've been afraid of, or I guess kind of waiting to happen, is that inevitable moment in which the scaling kind of catches up with us and we quickly become either borderline or completely or underleveled. And you'll notice that the trainer's Pokemon are level 28 here, or sometimes higher, so we are getting to that portion where we are almost identical level, if not for our powerful Loflord and Mini, but our original Pokemon are almost identical level, or at least close enough with these trainer Pokemon, so you can imagine what the next, or the gym in Celadon is going to look like. So I want to make sure that we utilize as much experience as we can. That way we can keep up, because I feel like there's going to be quite a bit of a difficulty spike, but I guess we'll see. Kind of, that's the issue that you can run into with these open world scalable games, is that these games were not optimized, or I guess built in a way to allow for this kind of exploration. So sometimes you'll have not enough time in between certain gyms to actually catch up in terms of level. Now, maybe the game in a linear fashion was designed for that, and it kind of paces out the levels and experience properly, but when you are allowed to choose which direction and which order you enjoy the game in, then you can kind of set yourself up for a little bit more difficulty if you kind of pick an inefficient path, which I'm sure we have, but it hasn't really been an issue thus far, as you saw with that last gym battle, but I think we will be in for quite a bit of I guess, challenge up ahead, I'm sure. I wanted to go ahead and check out some of this grass here just because I'm always tantalized with this game with the thought of encountering a Pokemon that was never there in the first place or in the original game, but as you saw there, just kind of the basic Pharaoh that I think you could capture on this route before. This is the building that I was talking about. This is a really kind of odd building. They have sort of a kind of underground, and not literally, but you know what I mean, Pokemon like battle arena here that it sounds like they're placing bets on, almost like some sort of quote-unquote Pokemon battle bets. Of course, pun completely intended, but this definitely was not in the original game, and a lot of these NPCs, well, they'll tell you that this is kind of the biker hangout, which I thought was actually kind of cool because it kind of develops the lore of the area a bit, or quite a bit more really, than it was in the original game, kind of explaining why so many bikers are just hanging out on the bike path, other than the fact that it's indeed a bike path, but they, maybe in response to that, they set up a nice little club here, albeit it seems like a sketchy club where they illegally bet on Pokemon battles, but who knows if that's even illegal in the Pokemon world. But that trainer right there actually offers us to trade a Lediba for her Smoochum, which would actually be an amazing trade. But since we did actually shift from the bike path to this route, I can't remember what route this is, you can see that we have one of those issues that we've run into from time to time where the level scaling did not apply to the overworld, and we have all of a sudden this steep drop-off in wild Pokemon levels, which I feel like has been the main issue that we've encountered. Other than that, it's worked perfectly fine, but there are a lot of routes I feel like that don't scale properly, and either can leave you completely under-leveled where you can't explore it, which I've explained kind of my thought on that. I don't really know if it's quite a negative or kind of cool in terms of, you know, there's more powerful areas where you can challenge if you'd like, but you're not ready for. I don't mind that, but it's more of when you go to areas that, like that, where maybe you'll encounter a Pokemon you've been waiting for, but all of a sudden it's way too weak. But anyway, we've made it to Celadon, where we will end this episode, and we will pick up next time, where we will explore this great city, and hopefully challenge a gym, and maybe find a surprise or two. As always, thank you for watching, and please have a wonderful day or night.